So, going into this project, Assassin's Creed Brotherhood was my favorite in the franchise. Having played the first game and the rest of the Ezio trilogy, is that still true? Well, yes, but now there's some thoughts to go along with that, but I'm getting ahead of myself here. For now, all you need to know is that this is part 3 of my journey through the whole Assassin's Creed franchise, and there will be no restraint on spoilers going into this. Are you ready? Let's go. All these years later, after playing and reviewing so many games, I've come to build up a different perspective and expectations, along with the reduced ability to stomach poorly made products, which really had Brotherhood and all the PC ports really off on a bad foot with me. I mentioned this product started as a video about AC Revelations, and what I learned in that one is that these games are not prepared to work on modern hardware. Choosing to limit my frames to 165 or even 120 rather than 60 effectively soft locked me in that game, making a particular level crash at the same point every time. Don't ask me why. When I went back to AC1 and forgot to turn VSync on, this happened. But I had learned from my mistakes by the time I had gotten to Brotherhood, having no issues in AC2. I just followed the same formula, capped my frames to 60, VSync on, and maxed out the settings. After all, when this game launched, the best graphics card you could get was a 580, and I find myself 13 years and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 card generations later, there's no reason I shouldn't be able to, um, oh, well, this is fucking awful. I guess I'll just be turning that down a little bit, and sometimes still not holding a solid 60 FPS, which is frankly absurd. I fully understand going above 60 FPS wasn't really an issue in 2010, but hitting it should have been within expectations. Alright, whatever though, I'm done ranting about it now, and we can move on to more positive stuff in the gameplay. Just be aware you may run into optimizing issues should you go back and play this game on PC.
What?
My sister knows how to wield a knife.
And I am ready to do it again.
Spoken like a true auditore.
Once you get your graphics settings figured out, you can enjoy one of my favorite additions to the game in the execution streaks you can go on in combat. Combat with Ezio was already faster than Altair, but its limited system had it feeling like a chore in the late game when you were forced into boring, drawn-out fights. The combat in Brotherhood is definitely easier than the games before, but that's honestly what I like about it. You weren't losing any fights before, save for carelessness, so why prolong the exchanges? It also makes sense narratively. An assassin who strikes from the shadows and aims to be gone before anyone realizes he's there wouldn't be interested in any prolonged conflict. Combine that with Ezio's skill level being so much higher than those around him, and cutting 3 or 4 guards down in succession makes perfect sense, especially when he mixes in a surprise tool like his pistol into the conflict. This is the first time in the series you feel as deadly as we know Ezio can be in a stand-up fight, and I love it. This adds yet another layer to the game that I love as well. You know how I mentioned that in previous games the lighter enemies would dance away from you for too long to make killing them and running viable? Not here. Take out the first guard, chain your way onto the runners, and take off. For the first time you can really feel like an assassin playing hit and run doing massive damage before seemingly disappearing into the wind. That's before we even get into my favorite addition to the game in the assassin recruits. They could pretty easily be something we discussed in the narrative section, but it's something that's so fun in the actual game that I feel like it deserves to be here. Once you hit a certain point in the story, Ezio will realize the only way to conquer Roma is to expand the Brotherhood, so he'll start recruiting fresh initiates and training them as assassins. It's such a fun way of doing game difficulty because you can solo basically every mission in the game, but you can also call in recruits to get you out of bad spots or use them to create openings you didn't have before, which feels incredibly satisfying when it works out. Not to mention calling on them for support in a fight, or the almighty arrow storm clearing an entire field with the motion of your hand. All these things, while not mentioned, would absolutely work towards instilling a fear in your enemies, building a reputation for the assassins, something they'd likely want to achieve were this real life. There isn't a great deal of new tools to be found in this entry, limited to, I believe, the poison darts and the crossbow. I never used the darts outside of thinking of the fact that I would probably need footage for this sentence, but the crossbow came in handy often enough and feels pretty solid. You can also collect the stuff needed for a tailor to agree to make you a heavy sheath so you can carry around those massive swords, but ain't nobody got time for all that. As far as the side missions go, we're mostly in the same place that we were last time, but if it isn't broke, don't fix it. In place of the assassin's tombs, you will have the layers of Romulus, some weird furry cult that's being run by the Borgia. That's not really important. What matters here is that you'll fight through, run through, or climb through 6 of them in order to find and unlock keys you'll need to unlock this game's legendary armor, which, while pretty hot, isn't as cool as Altair's legendary armor unlocked in the Villa Vault in AC2. One interesting note that I had and would like to share with you: if you, like me, couldn't put 2 and 2 together, one of the tombs is only able to be entered through swimming up to the entrance, but when you first find it, there isn't nearly enough water to get in. While I originally thought I was failing a climbing challenge, the actual solution is to repair the aqueduct leading to the pool you need to swim in to raise the water level. It's neat, I suppose, but in reality I just found it a bit irritating. Assassination contracts make a return, and we have a new addition in Leonardo's war machines. Our friend Mr. Da Vinci will find himself forced into building various war machines for the Borgia and will track them down and destroy them. And personally, I thought it was pretty cool to see his concepts brought to life. The last new piece of content is the Borgia Towers, essentially just bases to be captured, but they'll each have a captain that needs to be found and killed in order to take over. Some are willing to fight you, but most will run when you're detected, requiring a level of stealth when dealing with them, which I enjoy. Each one is its own little puzzle to solve, and while not strictly necessary, the effort to reward ratio is solid enough to have you taking them over whenever you're in the area. Each tower you take over is room for another recruit in your guild, and honestly, that's enough reason to do it, but it also allows you to rebuild that area of Rome, renovating shops and bringing life back to the district. It's a great addition that I'm sure most players will have welcomed. Overall, the gameplay to be found here in our third title is, in my opinion, a very welcome level of refinement in addition to the previous system, and I can easily play it for hours without feeling taxing or tiring. Although that might have something to do with the length of the campaign in comparison to AC2, with it being shorter here, there just isn't enough time to get tired of everything, which I appreciate. I should mention that the first iteration of AC multiplayer was added here, and I'm a huge fan. It was actually my first online multiplayer experience, at least at my own house, and I still have fond memories, but a more recent review will have to wait for the next video, as Brotherhood servers are no longer live on PC, but Revelations are, so I'll be dipping into the AC multiplayer Discord to get some games going. That's for next time though. For now, it's time to talk about Ezio's trip to Rome and the story that got us there.
Go kill them, Mentore. Finish what you started.
Good advice.
I intend to write a book about you one day.
If you do, make it short.
So the story of Brotherhood will pick up right where we left off, still in the Vatican. Your Uncle Mario will show up to help get you out, and you'll fight through Rome before reaching a rooftop above the river and being given the chance to get rid of the apple. Ezio can't bring himself to do it, which I actually agree with, as it would be much safer hidden somewhere deliberate, rather than hoping no one ever finds it downstream or at the bottom of the river. But whatever, the title drop will send us into the game. I mentioned that it's possible Ezio might have been signifying his return to a peaceful life when he spared Rodrigo, and his return to the villa seems to support this, finally letting down his hood for the first time, seemingly done with this war. And why shouldn't he believe that his war is over? The second game doesn't do a great job to make you feel the passage of time, but it was over the course of 23 long years. That's a lifetime for a soldier. If after 23 years you had killed all but one of your conspirators in your family's death, showed mercy to the last, and held in your possession a weapon of unfathomable power, then you'd probably feel like you were done too. You'll help out around town, catching a horse for the older stable master, carrying flowers for a nice woman, and testing out the new cannons Mario had installed. Foreboding if you're playing the intro to a video game, but probably a comfort if you were reliving it. You'll meet Caterina at the house and gather your allies to tell them of what happened inside the Vatican. They're unhappy to hear that the Spaniard lives, but I think it was a good choice and still wouldn't have changed the outcome of this game. At least I don't think so. Ezio removes his armor for what I believe will be the first time since we saw him put it on, and finally allows himself to relax before being joined by Caterina. His good night will unfortunately be spoiled by a rather poor morning, as he's given a rather unwelcome wake-up call. Mario will tell you that you need to buy the people time to escape while he leads a frontal assault, all while apparently holding the apple. A bit of a risk, but so be it. You'll man the cannons and do your best to hold back the Borgia. When the siege towers do eventually reach your walls, Ezio will move to help his troops defend the walls itself, and it's pretty fun. Then when it seems like there might be a light at the end of the tunnel, we find out it's actually just the start of new problems, as the plot really kicks off.
I know you're there, Ezio! told me about you and your little group of assassins. Andres! Give me the gun his friend fashioned for us. We've had too much bloodshed. I think the cleansing is in order. So consider this an invitation from my family to yours.
Ezio will fight his way out of the villa, locking the door behind him, and eventually hit the hero falls off the horse moment that I think might be required by law. At this point, you'll be pulled out of the Animus to help the team get into the modern day villa as Desmond, but I maintain that no one could possibly care about this past the first playthrough, so we're moving on. Ezio will wake up in Roma, still injured but able to move, once again donning the famous white hood with a new purpose. You'll see a doctor before overhearing some guards talking about going to deal with the man. You'll tail them and help him before finding out he was in trouble for wanting to lower the body of his wife who was unjustly executed by Il Carnefice. You tell him to tend to his wife and you'll tend to the man. It's a simple mission but fun enough and a nice little foot into the door of Rome, demonstrating a reason to be there beyond revenge, which is good. You'll catch up with Machiavelli, who I will now be calling Mac because spelling his name is hard and I'm going to have to write it down a lot. He'll give you a basic rundown on the city and take you over to your first Borgia Tower at this time. After your polite introduction to the followers of Romulus, you'll be taken to Isla Tiberina, which will act as a home base for the remainder of the game. You'll discuss the fact that the 3 factions you'll need are essentially unavailable to you, so we'll spend the next while recruiting allies. You'll start by trying to help with some slavers, only to be double-crossed. Shocker, I know. But regardless, renovating the Rosa and Fiore, which your sister Claudia will take over. Ezio doesn't want her involved in this line of work, but the reality is that she's suffered as Ezio has suffered, and is better suited to handle it than he may be willing to admit. Next up, you'll go to see Bartolomeo, who's struggling against the French and Borgia troops, so you'll free up one of his flanks by taking out the local Borgia command, allowing his troops to focus on the French. A plan from his wife, who, unlike Bart, isn't too proud to admit that they need the help. Behind every great man and all that. That simply leaves the Thieves Guild, who are led by La Volpe, but believes that Machiavelli is a traitor and refuses to work with him. He still doesn't trust Mac after you spend some time with him, but without proof, he can't act on it, and he is willing to trust Ezio. You'll gather your allies to find out what information they can feed you, and you'll learn that conveniently, all your enemies are in the Castello, where they will be holding Caterina, and the plan becomes delightfully simple. Go kill those dudes and save your girl. Getting into the Castello is a pretty fun little run that requires patience to remain undetected, but is entirely doable. Unfortunately, after a little bit of, incest, Cesare will leave and you'll find out that Rodrigo was never there. Lucrezia will stick around, however, using Caterina as her personal punching bag, so after going to check on Caterina, you'll have to go get the key from Lucrezia after telling Caterina to stay put.
I'm not going anywhere.
Alright, fair enough. Ezio, ever the gentleman, would never reach down her shirt to find the key. But luckily, after sweeping her off her feet, you bring her back to a friend that is willing to help her find it.
Always a pleasure. Bring her here, I'll take the key. Oh, classy. Guards! Guards! That's enough out of you!
I think they have the potential to be just the best of friends, don't you? It's a bit of a pain trying to maintain stealth while carrying her out, but it's manageable and you even get this funny little moment.
Don't you dare.
It's at this point you'll start building up the guild, rescuing your first few recruits, which I must say is on occasion a little bit harder than I think intended. I had not one but 2 fall to their deaths while trying to help them. Ironic considering they were dangling a guard over the edge when I found them. But it is what it is, they can't all be winners. You'll play out a couple of missions, getting used to the recruits and helping various people around town. Around this time, you'll run into Leonardo, who will show you a system he's established for meeting in secret to help you when he can, building new tools. It's actually pretty crazy to think that it takes this long to get your second hidden blade back, but it wasn't missed much. Next up, you'll go after Cesare's money, and I have to say it's really nice to see that working your way up to an assassination has made a comeback. You'll use Claudia's resources to go after a senator who's in debt to the banker, saving him, then using the money you give him as bait to trail it back to the banker's men. One thing I just noticed for the first time is, one of these guards has fucking Altair's sword. I don't know if this was just a mistake or something a dev threw in, hoping no one would notice, but I did. Anyways, you'll disguise yourself as the courier, a trick that's seriously gotta stop working at some point, and use the voice lines of the other guards to try to find your way to the banker's party, which sounds cool, but is mostly annoying.
I hope they let us go inside.
This is actually one of my favorite missions in the game, as you'll use the crowd and the courtesans to move through the party slowly but surely until you get to the banker and take him down. It's honestly just a really good feeling mission, and I enjoy every part of it. The build up, the kill, and the escape, especially using assassin recruits to help you on the way out, which makes it all look very deliberate. You'll get back to the Rose and find out that the banker's men followed the money back, but it doesn't really matter because Claudia is in fact gangster as hell.
What?
Up next, we'll go to help the mercenaries in their war against the French so that they can help the fight with the Borgia instead. When Bart's wife is kidnapped by the French commander, however, we'll hatch a cunning plan to get her back. After securing 20 French uniforms, we'll disguise ourselves as a French patrol, leading in Bart as a prisoner, which requires some finesse, but overall is pretty fun. When we get inside the French base and it pops off, Ezio will spring into action to save her and kill the general. Last but not least, there's thieves to be helped as La Volpe maintains his belief in Mac's betrayal. You'll learn that someone sold out our spies and ride to help them, learning a little bit from each one of the ones you save along the way. Cesare intends to kill Lucrezia's lover, who happens to be an actor named Pietro, and will do it on set. La Volpe refuses to help Ezio as he can't put his trust in a man who speaks to him from inside of a horse, and frankly, I can't say that I blame him, so you'll have to rely on your recruits for this mission. You'll discover that Cesare's assassin intends to disguise his men as actors in the play, and use that opportunity to get close, so you'll kill his men and disguise your own assassins as the actors instead. Climbing through the Colosseum to first take out the gunners is great fun, and being put on a timer, I was a bit nervous, which led to me rushing and making mistakes I wouldn't have at other times. Regardless, you'll get dressed and take your position in the performance, moving through the play to get into position to stop the would-be assassin. While you may stop his blade, he'll reveal that he also poisoned the wine Pietro drank, which I have to appreciate. The guy is thorough. Ezio doesn't kill him because something prophetic, blah blah, whatever. It should come back to bite him, but it doesn't, so it is what it is. You'll carry, Jesus to a doctor who will save his life, and as a thank you, we'll get to the key to the back room of the Castello, which I guess he just had on him, but I'm not brave enough to ask where. Ezio will spot a familiar face and chase him down, discovering that Mac was never the rat, and running to stop La Volpe before it was too late. After this, we'll retreat to Timber Island, and well, just see for yourself.
You and I have not seen eye to eye on many issues.
Niccolò!
But you are exactly what the Order needed. You have led the charge against the Templars and rebuilt this Brotherhood. Now, we must put Ezio where he belongs, at the head of the assassins. Ezio Auditore da Firenze. You will now be known as Il Mentore, the guardian of our order and our secrets.
This moment sent us into the endgame as we'll return to the Castello in search of the lives of the Borgia. Getting in was just as fun as it was last time, and even if your recruits aren't always the brightest, using them to allow for openings just really feels good. Rodrigo, in a failed attempt to poison Cesare, will fall victim to his own plot, and Lucrezia ends up having a pretty tough day as well, all things considered. She'll point you to where the apple has been hidden, and the race is on to get there before Cesare, which is possibly the easiest thing I've ever done. Seriously, I had way too much time to spare. Then after you acquire the apple, you'll activate God mode and run around Rome just absolutely demolishing all of Cesare's hopes and dreams. You'll kill his men in the big square or whatever the fuck, he'll kill his men in the Colosseum, and then you'll kill a bunch of his men at the gates of Roma. The apple makes these things trivial as you use it to turn men's minds against them, sometimes just killing them outright. You hold the power to do anything in the palm of your hands, and if you wanted to, you could even set fire to the rain. Sorry, I just couldn't help myself. Anyways, bad news. Cesare's army shows up. Good news, our guy is in charge and arrests him. While he's lost today, he proclaims with confidence that this isn't how it ends, and thanks to the apple, along with it being extremely obvious, we find out that it's in fact not. Ezio uses the information and heads to the battlefield to finish the fight. You'll chase him across some unexplained battle, and it's pretty fun getting to him. The fight itself is pretty good too, apart from the fact that they insist on ending these games with boss fights instead of some intricately planned assassination like we should, but I'm about out of energy to keep being upset about it at this point. You'll chip away at his armor, taking off a piece after beating back every wave of new enemies, finally getting him beneath your blade. He refuses to go out with even a shred of dignity, complaining about his destiny, proclaiming no man can kill him, so kindly, Ezio humors his words and lets gravity do it instead. He'll seal the apple away underneath the Colosseum, marking the end of his journey. Back in the modern world, they'll prepare to head for the vault, but realize they need a password, which just turns out to be the number 72, which I find entirely uninteresting. Anyway, as Desmond, you'll parkour your way through the area, finding a way to open the door, then parkour your way through the vault to reveal the apple. When touching it, you'll freeze in place and hear a message from the spirit people. They'll force Desmond's hand, having him kill Lucy. They don't really explain it at the time, but you'll find out in a later game that she was actually a Templar, so it's cool, I guess. Feels bad, though. These games continue to end as abruptly as possible, but there's nothing I can do about that but pivot equally as abruptly. So, going into Brotherhood, this was my favorite title in the series. Does it keep its spot? As of today, yes. While I don't think it does everything the best in the series, I think it has such an overall high level everywhere that I still have it as my favorite so far. The additions to the combat make it feel fresh and exciting while adding in even more ways to be an assassin across Rome. The recruits are also a ton of fun and a welcome addition to the system. Multiplayer, even if it's no longer available, was a great addition and felt great even in its first implementation, really providing an AC-like experience in a PvP environment. The story overall is fine. I personally didn't care in the slightest when Mario died, but I like the concept of Ezio being dragged back to war kicking and screaming, along with some fantastic assassinations that really emphasize the strength of the series. Rome is a great city to explore and fight in apart from the optimization issues, but they are honestly easy to ignore once you get your settings figured out. I would have liked some new additions to the cast, but I wasn't unhappy with the returning characters that we got. Of all the things the game did right, however, I think the length of the story was its biggest strength. I conducted a very scientific study to determine the difference in lengths between the two stories by dragging all of my mission footage into one timeline, and as you can see, Brotherhood came up almost 3 hours shorter, and yet it didn't feel like anything was missing. Where Assassin's Creed 2's assassinations felt like glorified side missions, everything in Brotherhood felt purposeful, and I liked that. You just didn't have time to get tired of the world like you did before, and that's rule 1 in storytelling. Leave them wanting more, not wanting it to end. Even leaving Desmond lying on a cold slab in the vault with unanswered questions finally made me interested to hear his story and what comes next. Brotherhood was an achievement to be proud of and something that I can very easily recommend to anyone looking to step into the series. Of course, I'd recommend seeing his whole story, but if you're only going to play one, make it this one. Well guys, that's it for Brotherhood and our third game in the series. I suspect I'll be returning in the future to declare this is the peak of the mountain, but for now, it's time to move on and finish Ezio's story as we try out Assassin's Creed Revelations. My outros remain as abrupt as the endings to Assassin's Creed games, but I want to thank you for getting to the end of this video. As always, this is Purple signing off. Have a wonderful night, and always remember to smile. Thanks, guys.
I intend to write a book about you one day.
If you do, make it short.